Welcome to week 2 of Magnus Monday Madness, where every Monday this month, I'll be summarizing all of the episodes from a given season of the Magnus Archives, ranking them by how scary I found them, and helping you decode plotlines. 5 stars goes to the scariest episodes, 3 to the merely creepy ones, and 1 to the actively boring or funny ones. Please remember, just because I consider something scary doesn't mean that you will, and vice versa. You can find episode-by-episode content warnings at the link in the description. Last Monday, we covered Season 1, in which we met the Archives team, John, Sasha, Martin, and Tim, all of whom are archivists at the Magnus Institute. The season finale consisted of a woman named Jane Prentice attacking the Institute with an army of worms. During the attack, Martin found the previous head archivist, Gertrude Robinson's, corpse in the tunnels that Prentice used to invade the Institute, and Sasha has seemingly been replaced by a shapeshifter, only none of her co-workers have caught on to that yet. Season 2 starts a month after these events, with the gang adjusting to their job no longer being to try to disprove these cases, but to figure out how they're linked. We begin with episode 41, Too Deep. John has started exploring the tunnels Jane Prentice used to attack them. He learns they were designed by Robert Smirk as part of a prison that once stood where the Institute now does. While exploring, John realizes that the tunnels are constantly changing their layout, and that there are signs someone is living within them. That's 2 stars for me. 42. Grifter's Bone. A band infiltrates concerts to play music that sends anyone who hears it into a violent frenzy. While I find this concept hilarious, the descriptions of the ensuing violence managed to be creepy enough to warrant 3 stars. 43. Section 31. The archivists learn about a special section of the police department, Section 31, that is dedicated to potentially paranormal cases. One of its members, Basira Hussein, reveals to them that Gertrude recorded tapes just like they do, but these have been under police custody as part of the investigation into her death. Basira agrees to sneak some of these out for John, in hopes he'll be able to help her solve what's going on. This episode isn't about scaring you, it's about exposition. 1 star. 44. Tightrope. The first tape John receives depicts Gertrude investigating a case where the Circus of the Other kidnapped a child and forced him to participate in some of their acts. Gertrude reveals that the Circus of the Other is run by the Orsinel family, and mentions that this organization has taken many lives. The statement also confirms Tim's suspicions that the Calliope, Brecon, and Hope all come from the circus. 3 stars. 45. Blood Bag. A scientist researching mosquitoes gets drained to death by them. Ooh, this episode gives me chills. 4 stars. 46. Literary Heights. Last season, we heard about a book with illustrations that give those who view them vertigo, along with a man named Michael Crew. This episode depicts him using said book to conduct a ritual that binds him to a force called the Vast. In exchange, the Vast gives him the power to seal a creature that's been pursuing him within said book. 1 star. 47. The New Door. A real estate agent named Helen Richardson visits the Institute to give a statement about how, while on a tour of a house, she found a door that shouldn't have been there. She went inside, only to become trapped in a seemingly endless hallway, where every door went to an identical hallway. Within this corridor, she was hunted by a creature whose description matches Michael Shelley the Distortions, who aided Sasha back in the first season. Upon finishing her statement, Helen exits the archives through a door that's never been there before. But by the time John realizes this, it's too late and she's already become trapped in the hallway again. Michael appears, warning John that it's only been helping him and the team so far because it wants to be allies in a greater upcoming conflict. But make no mistake, it and its teleporting doors are part of an equally dangerous force that they don't want to cross. 3 stars. 48. Lost in the Crowd. A young woman becomes lost in an area where not a single person has a face or is willing to acknowledge her. She's rescued by Gerard Key, that guy who appeared in multiple statements from the first season, tracking down Leitner books and foiling the Supernatural's plans. 3 stars. 49. The Butcher's Window. A private investigator is hired to track down a woman's husband, only to find he's being held captive and farmed for his bones by Jared Hopworth, who in the last season was able to exchange bone sacrifices for manipulations of his human form. Meanwhile, the gang are starting to notice that Sasha seems to have forgotten many of the skills that once made her such an asset to the team. John, growing increasingly paranoid, begins to secretly investigate his co-workers, trying to figure out if any of them might have murdered Gertrude. His top suspect currently is the head of the Magnus Institute, Elias, since Gertrude, other than Elias himself, was the only employee left from the Institute's previous administration. Perhaps she knew something about Elias, or the Institute itself, that he didn't want getting out. 3 stars. 50. Foundations. A pretty underwhelming episode in which we learned that Robert Spurk inspired a whole school of supernatural architects, but I find this episode pretty useless, since none of these students ever become relevant again, outside of a single episode where it's mentioned, "Oh, and this man built the train station." 1 star. 51. High pressure. Simon Fairchild, that geriatric skydiver, is back, and this time he's hired a diver to investigate a sunken yacht. While exploring the ruin, everything around the boat vanishes, and it starts to sink, along with the diver, through open water into the Twilight Zone, through which a giant hand reaches out for her. This is one of those episodes where your mileage will definitely vary, because I find this episode a 5-star nightmare, but when I share this with others, they keep being like, "Hang on, you found that episode scary?" 52. Exceptional risk. Last season, we learned about the serial killer Robert Montauk. This episode covers his time in prison, where he is visited by both his daughter Julia and Maxwell Rayner, the leader of the cult Robert's wife was a part of before she disappeared. The latter gloats that now that Robert's in prison, the monster he'd been trying to keep at bay with those human sacrifices would resume hunting his family. One night, there's a blackout, and when the lights come on, Robert is found murdered, which should have been impossible, as he was confined to a solitary, locked cell. 3 stars. 53. Crusader. Basira and John get their hands on another tape from Gertrude. This one covers the discovery of a bunch of corpses whose eyes have been gouged out, that are guarded by a creature with a single lidless eye. Gertrude speculates that this creature was once a capital A archivist, but even John doesn't know what she means by that. 54. Still life. A man visits a taxidermy shop only to realize that its owner is a taxidermied human come to life. The owner shares a name with one of the anglerfish's victims, and last season, when we encountered Sarah Baldwin, another victim of the anglerfish, she was able to manipulate her skin. This implies that the anglerfish is capturing humans to turn them into these taxidermy creatures. Sasha's impersonator goes to the shop to investigate, only to claim she found nothing strange. 3 stars. 55. Pest Control. An exterminator who helped the Institute with the Jane Prentice situation tells them about a time he encountered a similar creature, a man named John Amherst who was filled with ants. I remember finding this episode scarier back when I was a teen who could run to my parents whenever we had bug issues, but since growing up and learning to deal with bugs myself, this episode's lost a lot of its edge. 2 stars. 56. Children of the Night. Trevor Herbert, vampire hunter, returns to share more of his adventures, the most interesting of which involves a woman who, when injured, had spiders pour from the wound. Sure, 3 stars. 57. Personal space. An astronaut is sent to a supposedly inhabited space station, but can't find signs of anybody else being there. To his horror, when he tries to look out the window to gain a comforting glance of the Earth, there are no stars or planets, only a black void. 4 stars. 58. Trail rations. A woman is snowed in with her husband's corpse, which begs her to eat it so she won't starve to death. 4 stars. 59. Recluse. A man discusses his experiences growing up in Hilltop Road, which he ran away from after discovering the bodies of kids who had supposedly grown out of the system were tied up in the basement and filled with spider eggs. Yuck! 3 stars! 60. Observer effect. A person unpacking her dead brother's belongings finds a hand mirror in the bottom of a box. With it is the message "behind you." And ooh, when she uses the mirror, there's a scary face behind her. But when she turns around, there's nothing actually there. 1 star. 61. Hard shoulder. Alice Daisy Tonner, another member of the paranormal police, tells John about a time she pulled over Breakin and Hope's delivery van. While searching the van, her partner discovered that coffin from all the way back in episode 2. He made the mistake of opening it, and found a physically impossible staircase within that descended endlessly downwards. In a trance, he started climbing it. Before Daisy could pull him out, Breakin and Hope shut the lid behind him and drove off. 2 stars. 62. First edition. This statement comes from Gerard Key's mother, Mary, a former employee of the Institute, and was given directly to Gertrude. Turns out, hunting supernatural artifacts is the family business, so Mary tells Gertrude about a Leitner book called The Catalogue of the Trapped Dead. Each of its pages comes from the skin of a different person's corpse, whose spirit can be summoned if you read the incantation on their corresponding page. 3 stars. 63. The end of the tunnel. A pair of urban explorers take photos in an underground tunnel, only to be attacked by sentient silhouettes Shadow Man style. Meanwhile, Melanie shows up at the Institute looking for a new job, as an incident she doesn't want to get into yet has isolated her from other ghost hunters. 2 stars. 64. Burial rites. An archaeologist joins an illegal dig in Egypt where they uncover a living mummy. They tried to fight it off, but when it steals their weapons, it surprises them by using these to end itself. 3 stars. 65. Binary. There's a creepypasta going around about a man who uploaded his conscience to a computer and is now trapped within the program. Fans of this story like to make AI chat rooms that act as if they're haunted by him, but a woman exploring these ends up downloading the real deal. The man starts appearing on every screen she encounters, but to other people, these screens appear normal. To be fair, the computer guy never threatens her. He just makes unsettling comments and wants her to watch him eat his keyboard. Weird, but not malicious. Meanwhile, Tim decides he's had enough. The archives and everything surrounding them are just too freaking creepy. He tries to quit, but his body physically won't let him. John's body similarly locks up when they try to get around this by having him fire Tim. 4 stars. 66. Held in customs. A person is trapped in a shipping crate, but eventually freed by Mikhail Salesa and Peter Lucas. 2 stars. 67. Burning desire. A barista goes on a couple of dates with Agnes Montague, but when he walks her back to her apartment, they find a group of people called the Cult of the Lightless Flame waiting for her. She kisses him goodbye, but her touch burns him so badly that he passes out from the pain. He reawakens to find the group has murdered Agnes, but left him alive. I find this episode more sad than scary. 2 stars. 68. The Tale of a Field Hospital. A person gets a paper cut from a Leitner book that describes a man repeatedly dying of an infected wound, only to come back to life. Every time he dies, someone else develops and dies of an infection, but these people don't come back. The paper cut itself becomes infected, and the sickness quickly takes the man's life. Meanwhile, John explores the tunnels some more, only to encounter Sasha, who claims she's only there to look for him, but to John, something feels off. 3 stars. 69. Nice. Thought for the day. A psychology experiment is conducted with an arachnophobic person in one room and a non-arachnophobic person in the other. The former is shown footage of spiders, while the latter is observed to see if they can somehow pick up on the other person's fear through the walls. The experiment backfires when it causes one of the participants, Annabelle Kane, to act like a spider, attack the researchers, and flee the scene. 3 stars. 70. Book of the Dead. A person discovers a Leitner book that describes how they will die, but every time they change their behavior to avoid that situation, the writing changes too. 4 stars. 71. Underground. A woman takes the subway home, but when the doors open, instead of leading to a platform, there's a wall of dirt that begins to pour into the car until it is crushed and submerged. 2 stars. 72. Takeaway. Remember that Tom character from season 1? The racist Chinese cannibal stereotype? Remember how I said that there's a whole family of characters like him? Well, this episode centers around one of them, John Han, who butchers humans for their meat out of an abandoned takeout shop. Racist and terrifying. 4 stars. 73. Police lights. Basira tries to arrest that cult leader Maxwell Rayner, who has now kidnapped a boy named Callum Brody. She walks in on Callum being consumed by shadows coming from Rayner's body. A shootout ensues in which policemen and cultists alike are killed, but Rayner makes it away with Brody. John offers to help Basira, but she declares she's quitting the force. 2 stars. 74. Fatigue. A woman with severe insomnia begins encountering the distortion in her sleep-deprived hallucinations, but it's unclear whether Michael is a symptom or the cause. John sets up a camera to record if anyone other than him has been coming and going from the tunnels, and sees that Sasha has been repeatedly doing so. He also catches footage of a man he doesn't recognize seemingly earthbending the floor to get inside. 2 stars. 75. A Long Way Down. A man who's afraid of heights gets tricked into visiting a skyscraper's observation platform. While there, all of the elevators vanish, and his only option back down is a ladder hanging off of the side of the 59-floor building. 3 stars. 76. The Smell of Blood. Melanie is planning a trip to India, but before she leaves, she comes to tell John about the incident that led to her being ostracized from the ghost hunting community. Melanie specializes in war ghosts, and trespassed to investigate the wreck of an army train from World War II that was rumored to be haunted. A medic aboard the train had snapped and started to attack the other passengers, who then crashed the train on purpose in an attempt to take him down with them. When Melanie investigated, the ghost of the medic reappeared and attacked her. She managed to escape with just a scrape, but was caught by security, and a video of her insisting the injury had been caused by a ghost was posted to the internet, causing her co-workers to think she'd finally snapped and taken things too far. Having completed her statement, Melanie asks John if she can say goodbye to Sasha, as the two of them became friends back in season 1 when Melanie gave her first statement. When he points out Sasha to her, Melanie says that's not the Sasha she's referring to. When John insists this is the only Sasha working at the Institute, Melanie thinks he's mocking her grip on reality, just like all the others. 2 stars. 77. The Kind Mother. Basira and John investigate a box of confiscated tapes labeled Changeling/Imposter. One of these describes a woman whose mother is replaced with a completely different person. Everyone else insists that's how her mother has always looked, and even the family photos in their house have changed to match this. However, the woman realizes that tape recordings of her mother's voice haven't been altered to match the new ones, and tries using these to prove her mother has been replaced. Remembering Melanie's comments, John goes looking for tapes from cases that Sasha helped him with, only to realize that all of those predating the Jane Prentice attack have gone missing. 3 stars. 78. Distant Cousin. John listens to another tape from the box. In this one, a man realizes one of his relatives has been replaced by a total stranger, but everyone still insists they're the same person. That evening, he's approached by a man named Adelard Decker, who tells him his relative has been killed and replaced by a creature called the Not Them that Adelard has been hunting. They work together to bind the creature to a table, which is then taken away by Brecon and Hope, leading John to realize it's the very one the pair delivered to the Institute back in Season 1. He decides to destroy the table, and sends Tim and Martin home early so they won't have to view the repercussions. Only, instead of destroying the Not Them, this ends up breaking the restrictions the table had placed on their powers. 3 stars. 79. Hide and seek. Tim and Martin can tell something was off about the way John sent them home, so they go back to the Institute to investigate. Meanwhile, the Not Them corners John in the tunnels. The Not Them reveals that it steals others' identities, but leaves only a single person aware of the change so it can feed off of their fear. As they're about to kill John, the very walls of the tunnels shift, and the man John didn't recognize in the footage of someone entering the tunnels appears. 3 stars. 80. The Librarian. This man reveals that he is the one, the only, the book-collecting, dust-eating rat old bastard, Jurgen Leitner. While most of his library is gone, he remains in possession of a book that allows him to manipulate architecture. Instead of using this to recreate The Sims in real life, he's spent the past 2 decades using it to hide himself in the Institute's basement, which, now that I think about it, is how some people play The Sims. Back to Jonathan Sims, our boy finally gets some answers about all the supernatural things he and his team have been investigating. Jurgen reveals that there is a pantheon of roughly 14 entities, each of whom personify and feed off of a different type of fear. These beings are so vast that they cannot fully manifest in our world, so instead, they corrupt objects, people, and places, turning them into avatars. And John, without realizing, has become one of them. Jurgen tells him that the Magnus Institute was created in service of an entity known as the Eye, which feeds on people's fears of being watched or having their secrets exposed. When people come to give statements, those fears arise and it is able to feed off of them. By assisting the Eye in harvesting those fears, John and his team have become avatars of it, hence why they have all been unable to separate themselves from the Institute, as the Eye is preventing its new servants from escaping. John's hunch about Elias was right. He and Gertrude were the only ones who knew the Institute's true purpose, and when he learned she planned to destroy it to keep the Eye from feeding further, he killed her to protect his patron. Before Jurgen can reveal anything further, Elias himself emerges from the shadows, carrying a metal pipe. John books it as Elias beats Leitner to death, but by the time Tim and Martin arrive on the scene, Elias too is long gone. With John's suspicious behavior and Jurgen's dead body, they become convinced that John is the killer. And that's Season 2, everyone! What a cliffhanger! Will John be able to clear his name? Which other fears have their own entities? Who will Elias murder next? Come back next week to find out.